We're zany to the max, there's baloney in our slacks. We're Animaniacs, totally insane.
AmazzonKane's!
Animaniacs, those are the facts.
Animaniacs, the reboot that everybody's been talking about, and for very good reason. It's said to be one of the best animation reboots that's come out in the past few years. Very funny, very true to the original, very good with the modern stuff. It's got the same voice cast. Before I talk about the reboot, I want to talk about what I thought of the original. And this is going to be blasphemous to a lot of people, but I couldn't stand it as a kid. I liked the songs, and I liked Slappy Squirrel, and I liked the Good Feathers. I was indifferent to Pinky and the Brain. I could not stand the Warners, though. I found them very annoying. And the few times I did watch them, consistently, I didn't feel like the antagonists deserved the sheer amount of torment they were put through. So that turned me off. As I got older, I found myself respecting it more than actually liking it. I could appreciate the comedy a lot more because I got the adult jokes, the political jokes, the pop culture jokes. And I could appreciate the creativity and the setups. And I generally don't get into an overwhelming amount of sketch comedy, but I recognize this is very good sketch comedy. I could appreciate it. The timing was very good. And the slapstick was very good, and the wordplay was very good. That's pretty much how I feel about the reboot. As a general rule, to sum it up, I respect it more than I actually get into it. Most of that is personal taste. I do recognize it is very good. There's a lot of creativity. The modern stuff is very well done, because usually when you see something that's super duper modern, it feels very forced and it feels very trying to be relevant. This is very relevant. It's very specific in what it's making fun of, but it's self-aware. And I was laughing hard at it. It is very, very funny. I can't say that enough. That's really what they were known for, and they do that very, very well here. That being said, the colors are very nice. I did appreciate that they do have a variety of side characters and antagonists. They have Marie Antoinette as one. That's very funny. They have a episode where they do a recreation of Murder on the Orient Express, which is a very classic murder mystery. You can't exactly do murder on a kid show, but yeah, kid show. It's definitely, it gears towards adults, I would say more. But there's stuff I can recognize is for kids. Funny enough, not too much did I ever feel like, oh, this is clearly for the kids. I was thinking, oh, Animaniacs, it almost feels like it's more geared towards adults. Because they have very clever history and literature that adults can appreciate more so. But the slapstick and the energy is still great. And it's very self-aware, very knowledgeable, very in tune with pop culture, very good with what storytelling is, definitely makes fun of Hollywood culture. They put them in a variety of locations, so that's great. You do get to see something new each time. And it's very smart. That being said, going into the critiques, I'll start with one that's just more on a personal taste. There is a lot of gross out animation in it. I've never liked that in anything. There's a lot of that in here. Not a big fan. I also find the designs of the humans a lot of times are very grotesque, and I feel a little weird critiquing art as somebody who's much more of a writer, because it's obviously a lot better than I could ever draw. But I found that, and they do a lot of grotesque designs in the original too for human characters, but here I found a lot of the humans were very ugly, and in the original they had a mix of beautiful, really weird, ugly looking people and average looking people. Average, decent looking enough people. Here I find most everyone's really grotesque. It can look a little uncanny valley at times. Especially people with the really big smiles and the constant teeth showing. I'd say that's more of a nitpick, because it's also very, it's very Warner Brothers. They had stylized designs and stylized animation, and that's what this show very much had. I would say those are more nitpicks. Going into actually more of my critiques of the series, and this one is not the creator's call. I wish it wasn't released all at once, because they released the whole season, and because it's very formulaic, there's not even a lot of variety. Most of it is the Warners and Pinky and the Brain carrying the entire season, which is a shame. Even a lot of their usual foils, side characters, antagonists don't really show up that much. It's just these two groups for the majority of it. And the formulas, they have very distinct formulas. While they do change it up enough and the jokes are great, it's not a show to binge. It's a show that you can really appreciate the jokes more if you watch it once a week, because if you binge it, you do see a lot of the repetitive formulas, and you don't get to appreciate the time and effort the creators, artists, animators, writers put into it nearly as much as if you were watching it once a week, have a break. That's part of the reason I didn't get to talk about this right away, because I couldn't do it all at once. So even if it is very good, the formula, you do start to feel it very, very quickly after a few episodes. I could do maybe 2 or 3 in one go. After that, it started to feel like a chore, and it shouldn't. I wanted to appreciate it. I wanted to appreciate the artist's talent. This one, I also felt like I didn't feel like there were enough of the side characters or some recurring antagonists, which was a real shame. There's one antagonist the Warners deal with who... There's one antagonist who comes back a second time, but for the most part everyone's a one-off. And I would have liked to see more of the recurring foils, more of a mix. There's also a character introduced in Pinky and the Brain who it is implied is gonna come back but never does. That's a bummer. And none of the new antagonists really stood out. Funny thing, in the opening they have a line, "Our brand new cast have tested well in focus group research." You don't see a lot of them. There's a new executive, Rita Nora Narita. She doesn't have much of a role. She comes back maybe a couple times but doesn't have a huge role. You only see Dr. Scratch and Sniff once. There's maybe one cute little reference to some of the side characters, and they only have a cameo at most. But they are referenced. I would have liked to see more of them come back. Even Ralph the security guard. He's in it a couple times, but I would have liked to see more. Maybe more with him as an antagonist. And as for the self-awareness, it is very, very self-aware. I actually found that if there was any joke that was repeated, it was the reboot jokes, the meta jokes, the self-aware jokes. They're done very well, but I found those repetitive. I found those a little grating, a little too self-aware, a little too much winking to the audience, which took me out of it. I do appreciate, one thing I do appreciate though, they do, even though they don't have more the variety show feel that the original had, I don't want to compare too much to the original, because the reboot is very good. They do try a few new things. There are sketches that are completely different from the original, from the reboot. That's not the Warners, that's not Pinky and the Brain. There's one where you just see a bunch of eyes and they're in a dark space together. There's one about a little alien who is stuck in a little girl's house. That was really good. But it's fine. It's, I guess, I will say I'm also not the target audience. But I'm really, really glad I saw it. It is very well done. I do actually really like the modern jokes. So, mixed bag. It's very much how I feel about the original. I respect it. I will watch the best of the best once in a while. It's great for sketch comedy. It's great for the craft of storytelling to study. But as a fan, it's not one I personally get into. I tend to like stuff that's a bit more story-based, and the formulas here are not ones I particularly get into the way I do with other things, but still, there is a lot of good here, and there is a lot of creativity here, and I'm glad I watched it. My favorite sketch in the original was Survey Ladies. My favorite sketch here, that Edward Snowden one. That being said, I'd be curious as to what other people's thoughts were, favorite sketches, what they thought the reboot could have done better, what they thought it did better. Actually, is there something I thought it did better than the original? There is one thing. It's actually with Pinky and the Brain as well. One question I actually even had about the original was, you know that he wants to take over the world, you know what Brain wants to do, how he's going to do it, but you don't know why. They do address that. I'm not going to say what they do. I'm not going to say if it's really funny, what his politics are, or if it's really heartfelt, but I'd really rather you see it for yourself. They do address it. They do give you new insight to the character, and that is done here. So they are a little more thoughtful now than they were then. I'd be curious what other people thought, what their favorite sketches were from the original, from here, their favorite songs. Love to hear from fans, from people who maybe didn't like it as much. I just like talking with people who are also very passionate. With that being said, thanks for watching as always, and as Animaniacs says, good night, everybody.